Well, we've all known that most politicians are disconnected, right? Like they've got no clue about the real world going on around them. So this guy obviously must be looking at at current ratings, and we're thinking that, look, there's nobody out of 319 million, 2 million people watch, so I'm pretty good at saying this. And maybe we're imbuing this guy with way, way more intelligence than I think he has. But we've talked about the massive audience that used to watch wrestling. Those people are, for the most part, still around. So you've got probably about 1/7 of the country at one point or another, probably more than that now, because the years going by and new fans coming in. But you've got a bare minimum of 1/7 of the country at one point had a great affinity for professional wrestling, and so this moron do nothing from a district. And I live close enough that I get a radio station in the morning, WKBM, that's in this guy's district, and so I was able to hear the very next morning people from that district calling in, and they weren't none too happy with their with their representative, and several of them calling for him to resign. Several, not just over the wrestling comment, just over him walking out of the State of the Union address. And then back to the stuff with wrestling. As you know, I made a little comment on there to Ryan, very innocuous comment. One aimed specifically at raising money for a charity that he can pick.
Absolutely.
And he's got me by I'm thinking he's maybe late 30s, early 40s. So I'm an ancient old guy compared to him. Let's get in the ring, Tim Ryan. Let's get in the ring, Representative Ryan, and raise some money for a charity of your choice. And
love it.
See, like I saw some of the fans' responses on there saying, I'd love to see him. I didn't see him. I heard on the radio station, KBN, talking about it. They were reading some of the people's responses and saying, I'd like to see Representative Ryan get hit with chairs and thrown through tables, and then get up and make that comment.
Oh, it was everybody, from you to Ricky Morton, to all these different wrestling personalities to come out. But I think the one that really stood out, I was waiting for you. I mean, I was like, to go behind the curtain a little bit in the trenches of what was going on that night, and then seeing all this after a long night of work, and first person I thought of was you. But the one that's turning everybody's heads is the comments made by our big buddy, Glenn Jacobs, who we were just talking about on the last show.
Yeah.
Did you see his comments?
No, I did not.
Okay.
But he looked phenomenal last Saturday. And, what a great guy. A smart guy.
He's amazing. So he made a couple statements here, and it ties into what John was saying earlier. So he writes, "Sir, your statement is emblematic of the out-of-touch elitism so typical of Washington that has alienated countless everyday Americans. Professional wrestling brings joy to millions around the world, and
Correct.
Politicians like yourself usually bring nothing but misery." That was the first thing.
Wow. Spot on.
Right?
Kudos.
So he continues and he says, despite our political differences, real Mick Foley and I can both agree when it comes to pompous, sanctimonious, elitist. And he writes in parentheses, by the way, despite those differences, Mick is one of the best people I know. Maybe Congress could learn a little bit from us. Right?
Amen. Yeah.
So then you go.
Again, kudos.
Yeah. So then you flip over to Mick Foley, who shares another great thing. He says, thank you, Glenn Jacobs. And I agree completely. Knocking a sport, business, art that is loved by millions is losing hand for any politician. And our long friendship is proof that people can disagree without being disagreeable.
Amen. I mean, how many times, especially in those early episodes that we talk about, that's what has always been the strength of America, is that politically, you could be as far left and I could be as far right, or vice versa. And we could disagree and argue till we're blue in the face over that, and then ought to be able to go out and have a beer and call each other friend. That is the real strength of America. And when you see all these disparate parts, screaming and shouting and yelling and, protesting in their way, I'm fine with protest. But when you start, making just ridiculous comments like that, it shocks me. Because same as I say about Vince. These are not dumb people, any of them. If you run for Congress and win a seat in Congress, with the exception of maybe an AOC, it's you have to be a fairly intelligent person, right? And so to come out and do that. I'm sure now, in typical politician fashion, he would love to be able to take those words back and shove them back in his mouth and the back of his head and never speak them. But unfortunately, they're out there. And I think that the part that really stands out to me that's amazing about that is here we are 3+ years after Donald Trump was elected president. They still have not figured out, like Glenn said, that pompous, holier than thou, elitist attitude of everything is a huge reason why Donald Trump was elected in the first place. And they continue to shove it down your throat every day and expect you to at some point say, well, you know what? I was tired of it 3 years ago, but now I'm right on board with you. A pompous asshole is a pompous asshole. I don't care what political divide you stand on, and I don't care what issue you stand on. If you're a pompous asshole, you are a pompous asshole and probably turn a lot of people off around you.